Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with your 2024 AEW Double or Nothing instant analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again. We are here just minutes after AEW Double or Nothing went off the air to break down everything that happened on this pay-per-view. We're going to go through all the match results. We're going to give you some grades, and we will give you our final takes on AEW Double or Nothing by the time this show is over. Now, it is immensely late here on the East Coast, and we have a lot to talk about, so I'm not wasting any time off the top. Quickly, allow me to remind you, the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all that good stuff. It's also where you can vote in pre and post show polls surrounding pay-per-views like this. We use your fan grades in our breakdown at the end of the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. For $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You get bonus audio, instant reactions to Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and SmackDown, along with exclusive news posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. As mentioned, folks, we got a ton to get to. No vintage Chris Vanini on today's show. No cracking open a cold one for the Silver King because it's 1 a.m. Eastern here in these United States as we tape this. This show went immensely long. There's 12 matches we have to discuss, a major storyline as well. Let's just get right to it. Your AEW Double or Nothing instant analysis. Now, we break this down by what the Silver King believes to be the proper order of the matches on the show. Not exactly what AEW, or when we do it for WWE Premium Live Events, what they deliver. So I'm going to break this down. I'm actually going to start with the AEW Championship, Swerve Strickland against Christian Cage. But we're going to talk about everything that happened on the show. We're going to give you the results. We're going to give you the grades. And we'll give you any thoughts on what this means moving forward, either in the storyline for the company or for the talent. So again, Swerve against Christian for the AEW Championship. There was a video package for this on Collision showing Swerve attacking Nick Wayne in his gym and standing over the crib of Hangman Page's baby. Christian said he needed to be held accountable, and Swerve bragged about doing media for AEW. How Swerve is the babyface here, I don't know. AEW did get him a tad of sympathy with the picture frame shot. This basically reversed that by reminding of all the shitty stuff he did and how he actually deserves to get beat by Christian and lose the title. It's a little bit of an odd decision. Now look, I'm just going to say this off the top. Swerve is AEW's first black champion, and he has not only been booked over on TV with the EVP and Team AEW angle, he didn't even main event his first pay-per-view defense as champion. Now, it made sense circumstantially because of what ended up happening in the main event. Just saying that's not really a good look, and I'm sure he's going to wind up main eventing Forbidden Door given the concept of that show. I'm going to be real curious to see if he's in the final match at All In. Let me just put it that way. Anyway, he got a Warriors entrance. That popped me, one of the best entrances on the entire show. Christian hit a frog splash and a tornado DDT early. Wayne cheap shotted Swerve, who used Cage's turtleneck against him with a plethora of neck breakers and a froggy crossbody. Shayna Wayne grabbed the AEW title. Prince Nana stole it away. So, of course, the referee ejected him, despite the fact that he didn't do anything wrong. Luchasaurus and Wayne then beat Swerve ringside. Luchasaurus accidentally headbutted Christian. Christian avoided Swerve stomp for a spear falls finish. The ref finally caught the heels. He ejected all 3 of them. Swerve used the ropes for a double stomp on the apron, then took a header outside into some steel steps. Wayne took advantage by running back in with a cutter as Cage messed with the turnbuckle pad. Then he hit kill switch for a false finish. Nana chased Nick from ringside, despite both being ejected previously. They wound up on the announce table with Swerve countering into a Swerve stomp. Floyd Mayweather was right there in the crowd. Swerve then countered a spear midair with house call. That was the move of the entire night. And he hit Swerve stomp plus another house call to retain the title. And it's actually a shame that the first half of this match was so interference heavy and so, shitty. I'll just be honest with you, because the second half of it was an absolute banger. Even though 2 of them came back, once everyone was ejected, these guys were finally allowed to cook. The table spot and finish elevated this from a solid B to, I would say, 4 stars, A-. I can't ignore how much of this was frustrating and dragging, especially given the time of night, but it did fully entertain by the time it was over. Not much else here. We already talked about the match positioning. Christian was fine and a sensible first feud. Swerve does need something hotter. I do hope he continues to lean on House Call as his finisher over Swerve Stomp. It's much more dynamic. It can come out of nowhere as opposed to the Stomp that requires a lot of extremely odd setup. Really, the House Call intercept, that should have ended this match multiple times on this show. And this is a issue for AEW in its entire history. There's a move that should finish a match, and then you get 2 or 3 more moves for no reason whatsoever. You end on that House Call, and it's super memorable. Instead, it's the House Call, and then a Stomp, and then another House Call, and then you get the finish. So all they needed to do was change that, and this would have hit even better than it already did. Let's move to the TBS Championship. Willow Nightingale against Mercedes Moné. On Rampage, Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale beat Anna Jay and Alex Windsor in under 10 minutes. You may ask, Silver King, who is Alex Windsor? It's a great question. While immensely talented, she's a random UK wrestler, both in teaming with Anna and in the match for no reason whatsoever. And this was in the main event of the show, by the way. It was easily the best match, that said, on Rampage, but I digress. Willow appropriately won with Dr. Bomb, given she's champion and in a pay-per-view main event. Mercedes charged Willow after the bell. Despite Stat being in the ring with her, they eventually got separated in a pull-apart. Luckily, this also got a spot on Collision. Willow said she would wreck Mercedes and make her wish that she was still home injured. She also promised to prove that she's the better woman once again. Fine promo from Nightingale, but this was more try-hard than she's been previously in the feud. Not sure why they ran the attack Friday and this Saturday. I think they should have switched it. But this match began with a Mercedes-voiced video package where she compared herself to Rosa Parks, Amelia Earhart, Serena Williams, and a variety of other game changers. Now, I saw people losing their shit over this. I'm going to assume this was like a purposeful, overinflated ego heel concept video. It had to be. Because if it wasn't, I mean, yikes. But she got a drum line and a showgirl entrance. It was okay. Willow had her hair all frizzy, and she looked really cool for a change. This was third to last on the card with fans chanting both ways. They were on fire for it. Willow hit Dr. Bomb on the apron, Kevin Owens style. Mercedes worked the ankle for a while. Willow did a ankle lock and pounced Monet. She caught Mercedes flying for a terrific spinebuster, and she did a lifting powerbomb plus a fisherman suplex bridge. Mercedes slid down from a superplex for a powerbomb and put in, let's call it a figure 2. She missed something on the apron, sold the left ankle, then Willow attacked the right ankle with a really nice knee breaker and a prism trap. She hit Death Valley Driver in the corner, but missed a cannonball. Mercedes hit Meteora inside and outside. Chris Statlander tried to motivate Willow, only to get shoved twice by Mercedes. The referee missed a cover after a Dr. Bomb because of it. That led to a false finish. Mercedes then went to a submission sequence and took Willow out of the corner with Monet Maker to win the TBS title in 18 minutes. This was the expected finish, given the story they'd been telling with Willow and Stat through this entire feud, and Mercedes did get a nice ovation. Stokely Hathaway screamed at Willow after the bell, even though he was just as responsible for the distraction, so Stat shoved him. But as Stat took Willow up the ramp, she threw her backwards onto it, ripped off their friendship bracelet, with Stoke laughing as Stat hit Willow with a discus lariat for good measure. Unfortunately, as is tradition, AEW moved right off of this way too fast, not letting it sink in. That said, it was 11:30 Eastern, and there were 2 matches to go. So in this situation, I'll give them a pass. But really, normally, that's bad production. Now, Mercedes did not look like she lost a step, and the star quality shined through, even if the entrance presentation and the CEO moniker, those are both lacking. Even though I was a huge fan of the Will Ospreay match that we'll talk about in a minute, this for me was my match of the night before the final 2. And after the final 2, it actually is my match of the night. I'm at 4.25 stars and an A. Probably the best regular women's match in AEW history, compared only to Jamie Hayter and Hikaru Shida. It just straight up delivered. Mercedes was at her best wrestling. Willow was awesome, as she has been of late. There was storytelling with the ankles. Really, the only annoyance was the distraction. But that is mostly because it permeated the entire show as a booking crutch. It was appropriate in this match, and it fit the storyline, which is why it was bothersome to see it happen so many other times. The Stat turn, I absolutely loved the execution of it. Long time coming, clear direction of the story, similar to Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano with the camera lingering, so you knew something was going to happen. She gave off great vibes as a heel, totally looked the part. That's sincerely needed as a character change for her, but also it's needed in the entire division. The only real note I had on the match was Willow. she would be nearly unstoppable in the ring if she could just up her strength. All of her moves, they would look so much better and more fluid. It would take her from upper mid-carder to legit main eventer for the women. Oh, I did have a second note. Mercedes finisher, it ain't it, okay? I know it was tougher to execute on Willow. We've seen her do it a few times in Japan. It's just too complicated. It doesn't work. Hopefully, Willow does eventually win the rubber match here with Mercedes one day, and hopefully that is for the main women's title. That would be a huge moment. That's how it needs to play out at some point, I would say, inside of the next year. So let's move to Anarchy in the Arena. FTR, Bryan Danielson, and Darby Allin against the Elite. On Collision, there was almost a political-style propaganda video from the Young Bucks about changing the world and how everyone against them is evil. It was really well done. Also on Collision, we had Danielson and FTR beat Jeff Jarrett's crew in under 11 minutes. Bunch of stuff happened. I'm not going to go through it. Second pay-per-view in a row, though, where Danielson fought less than 24 hours before a major match for no reason whatsoever. I say that because at the start of the show, Collision, Tony Schiavone told us that Tony Khan returned and was back in control, so there was no reason for them to be in this match. Cash Wheeler said he would die for AEW, and both fans and wrestlers were better off because of its existence. Dax Harwood said some similar stuff. It almost feels like this entire story was created so there would be a reason to have endless stand-up for AEW promos on TV. I mean, it is the same thing over and over.
It's the same thing over and over and over. It's like missionary position every single night.
Like, I get it. You like working there. You like getting paid to work there. Cool. But it's every single week. It's multiple times, and it's not going to change after what happened in this match. Now, this was the official main event with Justin Roberts saying, "Welcome to the shit show," as it began. And folks, that is definitely going to be a drop on this show going forward. The faces attacked out of the crowd as the heels finished their entrances. Well, everyone except Darby Allin, who I guess was not in on the plan because he entered regularly in a face mask covered in thumbtacks, with his music continuing to play because that's the gimmick for Anarchy in the Arena. Matt Jackson demanded Darby's music get cut and had the truck play their music instead. Then Bryan grabbed the mic and demanded the greatest theme song in the history of wrestling be played. So the regular version of Final Countdown played. I shit you not. That is how this match started. Bryan had a big AEW shirt on. Dax took 2 shots of bourbon on the concourse. Darby did a coffin drop off of Vom, timed perfectly with Final Countdown. I don't know if it was planned or it was a coincidence, but it was a great visual. The crowd was absolutely loving the song, and it created this insanely chaotic atmosphere that was almost too much, but like in a positive way. You felt like too much was happening, like it was a sensory overload, but that also made it exciting. Then Matt grabbed the mic again and demanded it stop. And the whole match, understandably, dipped from a momentum level as fans chanted, "We want music." And it's a tough conversation or a tough decision to make because on one hand, there's the chaoticness, I don't even know if that's a word, of the music. On the other hand, it is too much. So, do you keep it on? Do you turn it off? Which way do you lean? I don't know that there's a right answer. I think if that music played, because the match was 30 minutes, if it played for 30 minutes, you would have wanted to just put your fingers in your ears and claw your eyes out. It would be too much. So it's probably appropriate that they stop it at some juncture. But if you're going to do that, they played it almost for too long to then go ahead and stop it. Do it for like 5 minutes, stop it, and then move on with the match. Anyway, let's get back to it. Darby and Jack went into the parking lot where Jack choked him out with a steel pipe and then drove a truck into a pile of garbage where Darby was clearly absent. But Jack sold it as if he got into a major accident. He passed out in the driver's seat. The Bucks hit Shatter Machine on a bladed Dax. Bryan bladed after 2 missed chair shots. FTR did a spike apron pile driver on Nick and then Power and Glory on Matt. Darby was back in the ring 5 minutes before Jack, despite being kayfabe hit by a truck. He hit Code Red on Okada, then took a last ride powerbomb into 4 open chairs. The Bucks dragged him up the ramp and sent him down in their elevator entrance gimmick. Bryan ate the TK driver on a poker chip set dressing. We saw 2 enormous fire extinguishers. I wonder if someone's going to get lit on fire. Nick did a swanton bomb off the entrance through a table. Okada did an elbow drop off the stage through a table. Jack walked back through Gorilla. He grabbed Tony Khan by his jacket and dragged him out to the stage. Darby came out with his flamethrower, so he's already respawned twice. And it's like a video game. He respawned out of this elevator, found a flamethrower, brings it out. He sets Jack on fire. Now, Jack was all wet in like the flame retardant goo. That was explained by him earlier getting dunked in water. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The Bucks had extinguishers in their arms before he was even lit up. Darby avoided a maskless spot into a trash can and kicked Okada in the balls, hitting him with a coffin drop for a broken fall. The Elite then tied Darby's ankles to a hook hanging from the ceiling. Nick ate Shatter Machine for a broken fall. Dax got hit in the head with an exploding chair. Really? An exploding chair. Okada then put on a thumbtack arm sleeve for Rainmaker on Cash. But despite that being his finisher that no one's kicked out of, he didn't cover. Okada then brought in the Reebok pumps with spikes on them as Darby was lifted in the air, eating a double super kick with his broken nose. Bryan came to after 10 minutes. He stole the shoe. He used it on the Bucks. Okada disappeared out of the ring for no reason whatsoever. Bryan hit Bazaiku knee on Nick with a chair for a broken fall. Okada caught Bryan with a Rainmaker, followed by EVP trigger, no cover. Fans chanted, "Please help Darby," because he was just hanging there. As Bryan reached for him, Jack hit the Bazaiku knee on Bryan, his own finisher, for the win in 30 minutes with AEW Double or Nothing going off the air at 12:31 a.m. Eastern. I've been doing this show for 5 years. I've been involved in wrestling podcasting even longer. And there's only been a few times where I'm not exactly sure how to analyze or evaluate a match. It started with men fighting each other while arguing over the aux cord. Entertaining, but odd because the storyline was serious. Someone got kayfabe hit by a truck and popped back up faster than the guy who drove the truck. This is when the match went from crazy insane to partially eye-rolling. Jack being lit on fire was cool, but it was so terribly choreographed, seeing the fire extinguishers like 5 minutes before the spot where you knew it was happening. That said, I give AEW major credit for explaining the gel with the water spot. They had Jack get dunked in a whole thing of water at one point. That was super smart. In fact, the best part about this match is that everything was done relatively safely. It was well thought out despite the chaos. That cannot be said for other parts of this card, but it was the case here. I could see people loving this. I could see people hating it. I was entertained from start to finish, but at no point thought, wow, this is incredible. I can't wait to watch it again. I'm going to tell people to watch this. And the other thought I had was, if this is Elite versus AEW and how the feud starts, how the hell does it end? Like blood and guts, which is basically just a version of this. To wrap up here, because it's late and we somehow have 9 more matches to discuss, I look at this as like an ebb and flow match. It was great, and then it was terrible. It was crazy, and then it was ridiculous. It made you proud to be a wrestling fan, and then made you embarrassed to be a wrestling fan. What I can say for sure is doing this so close after Sting's retirement match and on the same show as a barbed wire steel cage match and an FTW match that had weapons, it completely lessened the impact of the entire set. If you're going to have a match like this, it should really stand out on the card. And if you're going to have a show like this, then you should not have 12 total matches, 10 on the main card, plus a big storyline segment that we're going to discuss momentarily. So for a grade, because I know you all want that, I'm going to split the difference with it all. I'm going to call it a B. You can pick your number. I'm going to have to reconsider a lot of these grades next week when I can like open my eyes and watch some of this again. But I didn't hate this. I didn't love it. It was just, I don't know who specifically this appeals to, and in these days, in 2024, and whether AEW going to these lengths so frequently is worthwhile. The Dynamite rating on Wednesday might tell us. Let's continue with the card. The International Championship was on the line. Roderick Strong defending against Will Ospreay. On Collision, Ospreay cut an angry promo while still dripping blood after Dynamite. He said he has now been bonded with the title since his blood was on it, and he's going to take it. This is another excellent promo from Will, but it was an absolutely disgusting visual with the blood. Now, this match appropriately opened the main show. I had it 4th in my match order, just behind the triple main event, obviously. Don Callis was on commentary. Ospreay tried to take Strong's head off with Hidden Blade in the dark before the bell. Really hot start, including a step-up somersault off the barricade into the timekeeper's area. Tony Schiavone told us the crowd was chanting AEW when it was doing no such thing. It was chanting for Ospreay. Strong distracted the referee so Kingdom could do a tope doomsday device with Ospreay flipping himself before the move connected and then landing straight on his tucked-in head in a legitimately scary moment. The referee checked on him for 15 or 20 seconds, and the match continued. No trainer in sight, nothing. Now, Ospreay was fine for the duration of the match. It was a disgusting landing. He hit a nice handspring knee and a haluva kick. Kingdom interfered for the third time with Wardlow jumping into the ring and the referee bumping into them. He saw no reason at this point to eject any of them for ringside. However, once Ospreay hit a sky twister on the entire group, then the referee kicked them out. Officiating throughout this entire show was awful. Ospreay missed a high risk and sold a knee that Strong worked. Strong hit a superplex into a great backbreaker. Ospreay countered him off the ropes with a sit-down powerbomb. He had a really cool tornado-style counter and hit an Oz cutter. The referee did a kayfabe medical check on Strong, so Callis jumped off commentary, told Ospreay, go do the Tiger Driver, put him in the hospital, get the belt. The referee tried to stop him from doing the offense, and Ospreay put Strong in the Tiger Driver, but then put him down. That allowed Strong to come back with a big offensive sequence. Ospreay flipped out of End of Heartache and hit the Hidden Blade plus Stormbreaker to win the title in 17 minutes. This was a tremendous match as expected. Other than Ospreay nearly getting hurt, literally the only flaws in the match were the referee involved spots. These two were great together. Could have used some more selling from Will, given the supposedly injured knee. Really didn't prevent him from doing anything in the match. He looks really good with this specific title and should hopefully have a long run with it. Strong was really crisp throughout. They played great off one another. I can't go above 4.25 stars in an A just because of the first half of the match. A lot of cool moves, some limb work, lacking drama, lacking selling. It just could have been stronger overall. But again, 4.25 stars A in terms of grade, tied with Mercedes and Willow for match of the night. But I did think Mercedes and Willow was slightly better. Now, after this was over and Ospreay walked backstage, Adam Cole entered. He said he should be home rehabilitating and not there in Vegas, but he's one of the greatest of this generation. Cole said when he's 100%, you will give the devil his due. Now, he said he shouldn't be there, but he didn't actually explain why he was there. I digress. The lights went out, and we saw a video of a strangely adorned room with all of MJF's stuff in it. Then MJF returned all tanned and juiced up with an obvious hair transplant. He was wearing Triple H's 2002 return leather jacket with the jean vest on top of it. Fans popped huge for him and chanted, holy shit. Cole offered a hug. Fans chanted, you fucked up. MJF hugged him, then did a quick low blow, plus a brainbuster, and Adam Cole disappeared. MJF grabbed the mic, saying Cole's betrayal reminded him that he's the greatest wrestler of generational talent. He said he doesn't need a New Japan or a Vince McMahon to make MJF. Huge pop that Vince's name was mentioned because WWE. He said he made himself. MJF said he's back to being driven by hate, and the devil mask can go straight to hell. He stomped it. Then he did the whole Ric Flair elbow drop routine on top of it. Then he revealed an AEW Bet On Yourself casino chip tattoo right above his right heel. And he did the whole Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not fucking leaving line. This was a scorching hot segment. I don't like using the word buried, but Cole was tossed aside as like completely second rate the way this went down. MJF's promo was half paint by numbers, half original, but it didn't matter because the crowd was on absolute fire, hanging on every single word that he said. There's no doubt that business picks up when MJF is around, and it theoretically should be a shot in the arm for AEW across the board when it comes to ratings, ticket sales, etc. But that needs to get proven out. The Vince reference, whatever, but it is telling that just saying a WWE person's name gets the biggest reactions in AEW. The Triple H homage, thought it was cool because that's a historic return look regardless of the company. And I'm just glad he didn't use it in the promo. Like, hey, I dress like you. That doesn't mean I like you or want to work for you or whatever the case. He just did it as an homage and that was it. The tattoo. I'll just say this. It was smart to do it in an area that can easily be covered up by wrestling boots and pants. And it also has verbiage on it that does not express permanence. But I will also say this shit was ugly as sin. Like, it was really poorly done, not sharp at all. And you can criticize Cody Rhodes for his tattoo. The logo is cool. It's just in the worst place and it's way too big. MJF, it's in the right place, but it's absolutely terrible. As for the promo, the energy was 10 out of 10. The content, I would say, was 6 out of 10. And just as points of order here, this seemed to me like AEW and MJF admitting all of their mistakes and just straight up killing the entire MJF Cole feud with everyone moving on from it, given Cole started by saying he's not 100%, though he obviously did take a bump. That's the best case scenario for all involved. That feud and the entire faction has been an absolute flop. Also, MJF re-signed with AEW a long time ago. The whole bidding war of 2024 story was always completely kayfabe, but he was never even close to becoming a free agent. So I just wanted to point that out. All in all, a really good return for MJF. Mostly a surprise. It kind of got leaked earlier in the day. Having him back is great. The question's going to be, is this guy going to show up on TV regularly? Is this the gimmick and look that he's going to go with? I assume that second part will be the case. And what exactly are they going to do with him? Are we getting Swerve MJF for the title at All In? Maybe. And there's a reason for that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The TNT Championship was on the line. Adam Copeland defending against Malachi Black in a barbed wire steel cage match. If Black won, Copeland had to join the House of Black. On Collision, Cope said he knew that it was only a matter of time before they went after him in AEW, but he's been walking the path since before Black's balls dropped. He said he's known to be a master manipulator, and when you see evil in a man's eyes, it's already too late. This was probably his best promo in AEW to date, though the audio was kind of messed up, but definitely the best go-home segment from the entire weekend. Black's entrance included a huge flag. That was it. Copeland got a literal Brood entrance with him rising out of the stage and fire shooting everywhere. It even said Brood on the big screen. The barbed wire here was not throughout the entire cage like I expected. It was just kind of in random parts and then on top. Cope immediately used it to make Black bleed, mock style. Black responded with a barbed wire bat, so Cope put it into his stomach and then raked it on his head. Copeland took a sunset flip powerbomb off the ropes, shoulder first into a table. Black delayed the end, so Cope speared him. After a pile driver, I did look away for a second because something was happening in the NBA, but he put Black on a table and wrapped barbed wire around him. He just laid there. Cope climbed to the top of the cage on a truss. He was supposed to do an elbow drop, but he landed on his feet and then put his elbow into Black's stomach. And Black kicked out of this, by the way. Then he countered his spear with the end. Cope kicked out. He avoided being stabbed by some piece of metal that got put into the mat. Then he got kicked through the door. Then Cope speared Black ringside and the rest of the house entered. They stood next to Black. Then they walked to the other side and stood next to Cope. Black looked distraught, but all of a sudden, Brody King leveled Copeland. Back in the ring, Black put Copeland's ring on, put it on a necklace around his neck, put on a crown of barbed wire on Copeland's head, and then spread his arms in barbed wire like he was Jesus. Then Brood music started playing, and Gangrel climbed out of a hole in the ring created by the metal object. So Gangrel sprayed blood. He hit two of his signature Impaler DDTs. Black took him out with the end, but Copeland speared Black and used the barbed wire crown as part of a crossface as Black, of course, passed out. Gangrel and Cope then hugged after the cage was lifted, and this was another situation where Copeland beats a guy needing a win that could have been put over. And holy shit, is there no scenario in which one of this guy's big matches can be under 20 minutes? Where the hell do I even start with this? This was rolling as an excellent match until the moment Copeland climbed to the top of the cage. Everything from that point onward was some mix of ridiculous and convoluted. Obviously, it was overbooked as hell. That's okay in certain situations. But to overbook this and then overbook Anarchy in the Arena on the same show, and by the way, they also overbooked the FTW title match and kind of the Ospreay match, if you consider all the Kingdom interference at the beginning overbooking, that's a lot. The entrance felt like a recreation of WrestleMania 39. The Gangrel spot was what Cope wanted in that match, but apparently some in WWE refused, saying that no one would know him. That's dumb because people obviously do know him, so I'm glad that he got to do it here. But on top of everything else that happened, I mean, it was a lot. Black losing despite a 3-on-1 and then 3-on-2 advantage against two guys who were a combined 105 years old. Yeah, that's kind of an eye roll. Really, out of all the convolution at the end of the match, the most interesting part by far was the idea of Cope replacing Black, leading Brody and Buddy Matthews. They even could have paralleled it to him taking over this group when he lost Judgment Day in a prior life. And there's even a further parallel where, of course, Rhea Ripley and Buddy Matthews are together and one of them is in each group. It just would have worked. It would have been awesome. It was a great tease, and then they didn't deliver it. Back to the match. The cage spot was terribly executed and completely unnecessary. In other words, the risk was not worth the reward. Wouldn't be surprised if Copeland's knees or ankles that he was selling at the end were real injuries. We'll find out this coming week. That was a huge drop, though, and it did not look good. I was in A range for this until he went to the top of the cage. I went down to 3.75 stars B+ after the finish. One thing about barbed wire matches that has always bothered me, all of them, not this one. If you're a wrestler, wouldn't you at a minimum tape your hands and probably beyond that, wear like tough to penetrate gloves, knowing you're going to be handling sharp material. Like going barehanded, it's just dumb. And everyone does it. In this match, given Copeland's turn to the dark side and some of the other weapons available, I also feel like, remember that spike weapon that he introduced in the literal last major match he had against Christian Cage? He brought that in. He beat Christian with it. They're using barbed wire. They're using all these other gimmicks. Why wouldn't you bring that with you? Isn't that your signature weapon that you took out of a case because you were saving it? So I thought that was odd as well. Let's move to the Women's Championship. Toni Storm against Serena Deeb. On Collision, Toni said the main event should be her talking for 40 minutes and people analyzing her words. She promised to make Serena a victim and make her seizures feel like nothing. It was fine. Deeb later said that it was the biggest match of her entire career, which made it Deeb or nothing, and time's up Toni Storm.
Yeah, all your sports teams, they're all failures.
My lord, they gave the worst promo in wrestling more promo time. She promised to stretch Storm limb by limb and become champion. None of this advanced the story or accomplished much. This was third on the main card. Storm hit a great draping backstabber, DDT, fisherman suplex, bridge, and cloverleaf. Deeb came back with a neck breaker over the middle rope and a swinging version of it. Toni may have been shaken up by a slap to the jaw. Serena countered into a single leg crab, then slammed the knee on the canvas and put it back in. Mariah May tried to throw in the towel, but Lutha stopped her, and Toni reached the ropes. Storm saw the towel, blamed Lutha, threw it into the crowd. Deeb gave double birds, stopping Storm as she went for a hip attack. That led to Storm 0 for a false finish. Deeb worked the knee with dragon screws on the ropes and hit Detox both on the apron and inside for a false finish. Storm came back, catching Deeb on the ropes for an avalanche Storm 0. Match could have ended right there. Instead, she added a regular one and got the 1-2-3 to retain the title in 15 minutes. Deeb did not get much reaction here. Storm badly needs to be turned babyface at this juncture. It was an extremely strong match. Definitely the best women's work on a single show in AEW history. Something that bothered me, there was a plethora of like, look at all these reversals we can do types of sequences, and none of them really served much purpose. But that's a nitpick. Storm retaining was obviously the right call. Deeb paid off her story arc by standing as her top challenger to date. I also appreciated that a new chapter of the story was created with Storm and May and the towel and all that. There were a couple of rough spots here, and I kept going back and forth on a grade. I'm going to say 3.5 stars and a B. It's possible it was slightly better than that, but I did enjoy the black match with Copeland more, so you can't really give it the same grade. I mean, you could, but that's not how I feel about it. IWGP World Heavyweight Championship Eliminator, Jon Moxley against Konosuke Takeshita. On Collision, Mox and Don Callis met in the ring, with the latter recounting the cause of his scar and how he helped him win Blood and Guts, how he helped Mox win Blood and Guts. Callis legitimately rambled here, almost as if he was filling time, except this was the opener of the show. He said they could dominate the industry if they worked together, but he wasn't pitching him on it, even though he suggested Mox join the family. So in other words, he pitched him. Mox said that he'd need another scar on Callis to prove his commitment. Takeshita attacked from behind. He stomped Mox's arm in a chair until Blackpool Combat Club made the save. This was awful. Okay, I love Mox overall. I usually like Callis on the mic. I love Takeshita as a wrestler. This could not have been any less interesting until the arm spot. Interesting decision, because the reason to do that would be to excuse a loss for Mox with a rematch either on an NJPW show or on Forbidden Door. And I figured, okay, so that explains why this is being booked as Eliminator. So as long as Mox loses, then doing that spot makes a lot of sense. Let's find out. Callis was ringside. Mox came in with the entire arm and shoulder wrapped, so obviously Takeshita targeted it. The really nasty move on the apron. He worked the arm for a while, man. Mox caught him with a cutter, but Takeshita did a last ride powerbomb and disarm her. Mox basically worked with one arm from there, except during like a slap fight when it was suddenly okay. Takeshita did a cradle tombstone pile driver and wheelbarrow German suplex. Mox countered a knee into a paradigm shift. Mox did a bulldog choke with his bandage that had to be broken because it was illegal. So Takeshita ran him arm first into the post, hit a huge forearm plus Death Rider for a false finish. Callis told Takeshita to kill him, literally. So he threw 3 chairs in the ring. As the referee threw the first 2 out, Mox caught Takeshita coming back in the ring with a stomp, and then he hit Death Rider for the win in 17 minutes. The idea was that Callis' advice to use the chairs cost Takeshita the match. Now, AEW's like inconsistent rules, it made the entire chair situation a bit convoluted, but it did provide an appropriate excused loss for Takeshita, given there was no way Mox was going to lose as the IWGP champion, especially to someone who is contracted for a rival in Japan in DDT. The larger problem is that since beating Kenny Omega twice, Takeshita just stays losing. AEW has never capitalized on all the momentum they gave him. Outside of the one mistake, I thought Mox's selling was pretty solid. The booking plan made the match slow. That was a consequence. And I think there's only really been one time in AEW history where a challenger has actually won an eliminator match. This time, the champion won despite having one arm. And then you look back at it and you say, similar to the MJF and Jay White situation, if that person was going to win anyway, why are you injuring them to that degree? Especially when Mox is the champion for another company right now. And all that injuring MJF did in that match was make White look worse. This was a really tough grade because I liked a lot of the work. I'm saying 3.75 stars B+, but if you're slightly lower at a B, then I probably agree with that as well. Bang Bang Gang fought Death Triangle in a trios match, and we didn't know at first whether this was for the championships. On Rampage, Pac beat Rocky Romero in 7 minutes with the Brutalizer. There was even less reason than usual for this match happening, given they're both baby faces. I don't know why you would use Rocky in this situation when he's already been on TV taking loss after loss for weeks now. After the bell, Pac and Death Triangle decided the match would be for the Trios Championships. After that was left hanging Wednesday. And for some reason, the challengers get to decide whether they get a title match, even though, of course, they should want one from the very beginning. On Collision, the Lucha Bros fought the Gun Club. The Faces won in 8 minutes. Neither Jay White nor Pac were ringside, which I believe was unexplained. Pac came out after the bell. White stood on stage with the 3 titles all buckled together. The Lucha Bros kids were in the ring with them because, I don't know, why not? So this was second on the main card. The Lucha Bros hit the taint dropkick and a double tope. Pac took a counter DDT on the top of his head and started convulsing. It was an excellent sell job by him, but the convulsing for me is always a step too far unless it's something truly devastating and something that leads to someone being written off a show, is what I'm trying to say. Rey Fenix did a great shoulder stand splash off Penta. White and Pac had a great but way too brief sequence between each other. Lucha Bros hit the tandem Fear Factor, and Fenix threw himself outside with a tope. As Pac went to the top rope for a Black Arrow, Juice Robinson returned and pushed him off with White hitting Blade Runner to retain the titles. I believe I had that booking dead to rights on the Ultimate Preview. And it was the right booking. Entertaining match despite a lacking storyline coming in. The right winners with Bang Bang Gang retaining the titles they just won, and the right opportunity to return Juice. High quality action bell to bell, but it was really just spot after spot after spot with nothing else involved. It's a B, 3.5 I'll say, but maybe 3.25 stars, but it was a flat B. FTW Championship, Chris Jericho against Hook and Katsuyori Shibata in an FTW rules match. On Rampage, Jericho cut his new smarmy promo saying this match would be FTW rules, and he already beat both guys. Shibata then attacked Big Bill, and Hook attacked Jericho with Red Rum over the barricade before they brawled into the crowd, and AEW just went to commercial as they continued fighting backstage. Hook mean-mugged Shibata, and then Samoa Joe, who interrupted with more tough love. His insinuation was that Shibata should be helping Hook win back the FTW title, which did not make a shred of sense. Renee then faked a laugh as a bad text-to-type joke about Carrot Top landed from Shibata. Then on Collision, Brian Keith interrupted a Jericho promo, saying it wasn't the last he's seen of him. Keith's singles wins right now are over JD Drake and Boulder. He's 2-16 overall in AEW. Could probably use a learning tree, don't you think? Jericho got a ton of pyro on his entrance, which put a huge grin on my face because it just fit into the gimmick so well. He dumped out a bag of dye and immediately took 2 suplexes into them, plus a nasty double backdrop where he landed on the back of his head. Really ugly. They all got kendo sticks. Hook and Shibata no-sold shots and double beat Jericho. He was put on a table way too close in the corner, with Shibata doing an avalanche Death Valley driver, meaning to crash through the table. Fans booed because the easily breakable table, which was weakened and obvious, was missed, and they careened off Jericho. So Jericho put the table in the corner and then basically got run into it. It's ridiculous. Hook forgot a spot and blatantly walked over to Jericho in the middle of the match, being like, what do I do now? And then Jericho told him. Big Bill interfered to break Red Rum, but Hook took him off the apron with a T-bone suplex through a table outside. And this was the worst part of the entire... I mean, the Ospreay thing was terrible. This might have been worse because they didn't bother to set up the table right, nor hit the right part of the table. They just did the move. And Big Bill lands not in the center of the table, but near the end of the table. He came excruciatingly close to taking a metal table leg through the shoulder, into the head, maybe even into the eye. It was really bad, and he was really, really lucky. Shibata countered Jericho into a figure 4 As Hook put him in Red Rum in a repeat of the number one contendership spot, suddenly Keith, in a luchador mask wearing all black, broke the double submission with a trash can. He wrapped it around Shibata. Jericho hit Hook with Judas Effect and then just pinned Shibata while he's in the trash can to retain the title. Hook then beat up security guards because he always does, and Jericho went backstage. Now, the finish would have been so much better if AEW had not spoiled the Keith heel turn on Collision, especially since they did it as a reveal, which in and of itself made no sense because he's not even a notable guy. Maybe if Brian had been denied by Chris a few weeks ago or lost a match to him and there was a gap of time and then this happened, that would have been smart. But having him involved with Jericho 24 hours before this match made it so damn obvious. And again, the reveal part of it was just, it was so lackluster. No one reacted to it. The work was mostly fine, but again, there were 3 separate moments of near disaster in one match. I mean, the fans literally booed one of them. The Big Bill spot looked great, but twice in this match, the tables were positioned incorrectly. And I'm serious when I say that Bill bump could have been an unmitigated disaster. They are so lucky it was not. The finish did not make any sense because Shibata completely no-sold trash can shots in the prior FTW match a few weeks ago, and then he was easily pinned by one here. Plus, as the referee, you can't even see whether his shoulders are down in there. Every time I thought about something else in this match, I kept downgrading it. I'm at 2.75 stars, C+. One thing I was confused about as well, Jericho wins the title. He changes it from fuck the world to for the world, but he's still okay with doing the original hardcore FTW rules. I'm not really sure that connects. We had Orange Cassidy against Trent Beretta. On Collision, Trent said he's already said everything he has to say. So why was he doing an interview? Rocky then interrupted, hoping they could put it all behind them. Trent took out one of his best friends and he wants to beat the shit out of another one. Why would he put it all behind him? None of this made sense. Callis was on commentary for this match as well. Trent got a badly needed new theme. Orange did not come out to his normal entrance, instead the Pixie song, which has always been more fitting for him. So 2 theme improvements in one match. Orange also wore a black t-shirt for the first time, and he had darker tinted jeans. So he's a moody teenager now. Cassidy landed on his head during a Saito suplex. Trent dominated most of the match. Orange did his gimmicks. Trent came back with a well-executed Gotch pile driver on the apron. Cassidy dropped him back first into the steel steps and hit beach break ringside. Then he feigned a hug and hit Michinoku driver and another beach break. Trent hit a code breaker, but as he tried to put Cassidy in a triangle choke, he was unable to lock it in, so Orange just flipped over him and won 1-2-3 with a jackknife cover. Trent went catatonic. Callis put over Orange on commentary. Trent walked down the side of the ramp with Romero and Renee confronting him. He refused the interview and said it's over. Then he walked through the crowd instead of the backstage area. I maintain that not having a hardcore stipulation, given Trent graphically took out Chuck Taylor and then attacked Orange, did not make a shred of sense. To then move from that to poor me, I was out wrestled by Orange, that does not fit together. And this really felt like a situation where Cassidy should have rarely lost something. But what I enjoyed about the match was that it was story heavy, which stood out on this AEW card. There's also story coming out of it. So I'm not going to judge it too harshly until we see where it goes. Because of that, though, as I said coming in, this would have been better placed as like a Dynamite main event. It just did not belong on this show. Given everything else on the card, it was unremarkable. I'm going to call 3.25 stars and a B. So with that said, yes, the Bang Bang Gang Death Triangle Trios title match, let's make that 3.5 stars because that was better comparatively. But so 3.25 here and a B. I mean, it was fine, but not much of anything. Callis later on the show said that he was breaking news. He was going to offer a contract to the Don Callis family to someone on Dynamite. The insinuation being that it's Orange. I still believe it's going to be Trent. I don't think that's so exciting, but we'll see what happens Wednesday. Now for the buy-in, we'll get to this really quick. Thunder Rosa fought Deonna Purrazzo. Purrazzo made this challenge on Rampage in a decently solid promo. But what was funny, though, is that she specifically made the challenge for the buy-in, which I've never heard someone say, I want to fight you, but only on the kickoff show. No wrestler or competitor would ever make a challenge like that because who would not assume that their match was good enough to be on the main card? This was first overall. Rosa did a pendulum submission. Purrazzo came back with a trio of woe spear. I maintain more wrestlers should do that. Rosa came back with a discus forearm. Ultimately, after a counter combination following an armbar, Purrazzo caught Rosa in a roll-up and grabbed the bottom rope behind the referee's back for the win. Appropriate finish to continue the feud, which you must expect is the plan here. While these two, they're both quality wrestlers, this was not a great kickoff show match. You want action. You don't want slow plotting wrestling. I went 2.75 stars and a C+, but maybe that's even a little too high. The Acclaimed fought Cage of Agony in the buy-in. You may ask Silver King, how did this random-ass match wind up on a pay-per-view? Well, I'll tell you. On Collision, House of Black beat the Acclaimed, the Infantry, and Gates of Agony in 11 minutes. They did the combination cannonball dropkick for the win, which worked much better without the chair. Later, Brian Cage and the Gates cut a promo basically establishing they're still a trio, and they're now Cage of Agony. Acclaimed cut their promo on the buy-in with Max Caster saying he doesn't even know their names, which is true. I always struggle with them. Sometimes I can come up with Bishop Khan if I really think about it, but not the other guy. This all stemmed from the random Cage Anthony Bowens match like a week ago. So Cage of Agony, very much like a Ring of Honor sounding promo or Ring of Honor looking group. I don't see how they're going to work on AEW. Billy Gunn ate a triple powerbomb as the referee decided that tagging simply did not matter. Cage grabbed a chair that got stolen by the Las Vegas Knights mascot. That let Caster hit a famous ringside, and Gunn beat Khan, I think, with an inside cradle. Fun spot with the mascot, weak finish in the ring, especially throwing away like the minimal momentum the heel group was starting to gain. Caster's rap was okay. The entire Acclaimed group it's so played out. They got to freshen shit up. 2.25 stars and a C. Also during the buy-in, Martha Hart, with Tony Khan's arm around her, came out to announce the Owen Cup. Tony announced the winners will get world championship shots this year at All In, claiming it was Martha's idea. Now, this is a positive development because these tournaments have meant absolutely nothing to this point. So it's actually a total 180 for their value. And it's a wonder that there was never anything attached to them the first 2 years. As we probably said multiple times on the podcast, why are these tournaments happening if there's nothing resulting from them? I'm not sure that I would have done the title matches at All In, as that's almost unnecessarily limiting from a booking standpoint, especially if someone gets hurt, but I'm sure it'll be okay. I would consider MJF and a returning Jamie Hayter as the favorites for these tournaments. Obviously ironic, this came 3 days after WWE announced the King and Queen of the Ring winners will get their title shots at SummerSlam, which is also obviously during the summer. I am sure AEW planned this long ago, but it's the second time in 1 week that WWE has done something like 1 to 2 days before AEW, and that's got to be frustrating as hell when that randomly happens. So that really wraps up what happened on the show. Let's get to the grades. The pre-show grade, I gave it a B+ coming in. Getting Overheads, all of our listeners and Twitter followers at Getting Overcast. This is how you voted. 16% A, 44% B, 28% C, 12% D to F. Very surprising. That averaged out to an 82 out of 100, or a B-. This is one of the more shocking pre-show grades I can remember. Even if you didn't love the card coming in, the potential for exciting, entertaining matches and notable developments on an AEW show, it's usually really solid. For example, this was a far better card coming in than World's End, and I'm sure that got better than a B-. But look, that was the pre-show grade. Let's move on to the post-show grades. Now, before I get to mine, I will, of course, read your grade. Usually Vintage Chris Vanini gets a chance to go first. He's not here, so therefore we're going with the fan grade, and then we'll go with the Silver Kings grade. So the totals, and there's still some time on the voting, but it probably won't change that much. 25% between A+ and A, 21% between A- and B+, 35.4% between B and B-, and then 17.7% C+ or lower. That averages out to an 87 or a B+. And I think that is probably around what's right. So let me go ahead and break down the show as I saw it, and then I'll give you my grade once I compartmentalize all of that. So this show ended after 12:30. Way too fucking long. Like, if you know the long extended MJF segment is going to be part of the show, which obviously they did because they planned it, just book 8 matches. There was no reason to do 10 on the main card and then 2 on the buy-in. Orange and Trent, FTW, probably one other, the trios title match, in fact. Those 3 matches. You take 2 of those away or all 3 of them away. You either save them for the next pay-per-view or you do them on TV and you give people a reason to tune in. Everyone would have been better off for it. That said, as difficult as this was to watch at home, as exhausted as I am now doing this, the Las Vegas crowd was immense. They did a fantastic job keeping their energy up for the entire show. Nearly every match on this card, and it's too late for me to count the exact number, but nearly every match had some type of shenanigans or distraction or outside interference or weapon in a regular match that factored into the finish. If you have 6 matches on a card and it happens on 3, okay, that's a lot and it's frustrating. If you have 10 and it happens in 8, that's ridiculous. I tweeted this during the show. AEW has gone through a ton of slogans over the years. This year, restore the feeling and wear the best wrestling, right? This felt like AEW, oh, fuck it, whatever. Like, I'm not sure how else you describe it. Also, with AEW, given the price of the show, it's always fair to ask, was this worth $50? And I forgot to address that going into the show. I would have said no on the Ultimate Preview if I remembered. Coming out of it, though, the answer was yes. And that's usually the case, except at the tail end of 2023. Looking at the matches themselves, the Ospreay match, the Mercedes match, Swerve the second half, Copeland the first half, and then Anarchy in the Arena for just the chaos of it all. Those parts were super entertaining. But again, if I'm splitting matches in half and the commentary on Anarchy in the Arena is like, it was great, but it was also terrible at the same time, then it's very difficult to kind of, piece that together as a show and come up with a grade overall for it. I think one of our listeners actually tweeted us, arguably the hardest pay-per-view to ever be graded. That was Capture Flies 666 at Capture Flies on Twitter. And a lot of you tweeted similar things. Overbooked and bloated. 4.5 hours is just way too long. That was Jordan at LSU Jordan 45. Hooray Blanco at John D. I was in and out of sleep by the triple main event. I may change it. He was B+ to A-, but that's pretty much where I'm at. I mean, this was way too long of a show. It was overindulgent is really the best way to put it. But at the same time, it was super entertaining for the vast majority of it. So, looking at WWE King and Queen of the Ring, I gave that a 90 out of 100 on Saturday. But you can't even really compare these shows to one another. One was a 5-match card that was glitz and glamour. And I mean, really, there was quality wrestling on that as well. But, nothing hardcore. Just a totally different atmosphere, a totally different show, obviously a totally different location, totally different crowd as well. Here was like a 4.5-hour show that had a lot of great, some good, some bad, a little bit terrible. So I got to agree with kind of what John said and really what the listeners are saying here. I'm at a B+ overall for the show. And I actually think the number is correct. 87 out of 100, because it wasn't a high B+. I wouldn't put it in that A- category, but it was a strong show that was worth the money, had some memorable moments, and particularly with the MJF surprise, you come out of it more curious as what's going to happen on Dynamite this coming Wednesday. And I can't necessarily say I felt that way out of a lot of AEW pay-per-views over the last 6 months. So folks, that wraps up your AEW Double or Nothing instant analysis. I hope the Silver King didn't sound too tired while we were breaking this down. It was a hell of a long night and a hell of a long weekend. On the way out, allow me to remind you a couple things. First, we have your WWE King and Queen of the Ring instant analysis in the podcast feed. So if you somehow missed that, make sure you listen to it. And make sure you listen to it before this coming Tuesday, as we will have our next WWE show. And then, of course, this coming Thursday, we'll have our next AEW and NXT show. Let me also hit you with some of those reminders. First, the Getting Over Wrestling podcast.
It's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can vote in those pre and post show polls. You can send us DMs and tweets, questions and comments for the show, submissions for our last word segment on Tuesdays, all of that at Getting Overcast on Twitter. You can also email us, gettingoverpod@gmail.com. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. For $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, instant reactions to Raw, NXT Dynamite, and SmackDown every week, along with exclusive news posts on Fridays. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Now the show's over. Silver King's voice is almost gone. We got 2 more shows for you this coming week, so it is time to wrap all of this up. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.